Mia, thanks so much for your time today. I suppose let's kick off then with a look at Santam's results. You heard Ian Kirk just explaining, some of the aspects of the business right now. Overall, were they in line with your expectations?
Well, this was in line with the expectations. They did say that their earnings was going to be affected by that the tax implication. I think it's very conservatively managed. The way that they have already provisioned for next year's capital gains tax, they've taken a very conservative stance in that way. It's a business that we've known to be managed this way since I've been looking at this business. At the moment, they still remain a very cash generative business, and it's been a very good investment for many portfolios over the longer term.
If you can get your hands on the stock, because it's not one of the most liquid stocks in this space, would it be worth coming into the market at this point though?
No, at the moment it looks quite expensive, especially if you look at the net asset value and also on the earnings side. It looks to the expensive side if you compare it to the 5-year average on that space. The share has performed exceptionally well over the last year. The total return of this company has been in the area of 50%. So at the moment it doesn't look cheap, and I wouldn't buy a share just because it's a good company.
Well, of course, it's all about the price. Harmony also in the news today. It came out with its production and output target, but it's all about this gold pool project, which they say is going to be a game changer, looking to diversify outside of South Africa. $4.8 billion. They say they only need funding by 2017. Are you buying into this growth story, and are you buying into a miner like Harmony?
Well, the growth story for Harmony looks very good. Graham Biggs has been exceptionally positive about this since they've started with the feasibility study. Now with the completion of the study, they've actually shown us that they are going to have 42% of their reserves in Papua New Guinea, which is good for the company because they're not so exposed to the South African market, which is very volatile, especially on the...
And high cost.
Very high cost. We know that on the latest earnings they've released, we saw that the cost increased by 20%, and then with the gold price in rand up 36%, it is quite difficult to make sustainable earnings or earnings growth for shareholders if you have such a high cost pressure. So I think the diversification away from South Africa, especially into an exciting market like Papua New Guinea, where the mine seems very promising, it seems even as if they could put up a second mine there. It remains a long-term project though. It's only going to start producing gold and copper in 2019, which is still a couple of years away. But it is a good prospect for Harmony. We don't invest in gold shares though, so. Yeah. But still a good prospect for the company. Yeah,
for the company. And I mean, you're just looking at the volatility of that gold price. I mean, with $1,600 gold price, you're looking at additional capital cost needed of 4.4 billion rand. And if it's 1,400, they need double that, almost double that to 7 billion rand. So there is high risks involved in this if you are looking to get involved.
That's right. And as we know, the gold sector, there's always high risks involved. The gold price is a volatile price. We've seen now just how the gold price has not moved the last year or so like it has always moved in comparison with the risky assets. The correlation has been much higher, which has been quite unknown for the gold price to do. So additional risks setting into this market, and the problem remains up until 2019, the biggest production still comes from South Africa, which has a very volatile labour market, and we've seen, with the likes of Lonmin the last couple of weeks, which remains a very high risk area for any investor to get into.
Certainly, when it comes to the construction space, also a space that hasn't really managed to go anywhere, but it seems that Murray & Roberts are doing a lot better. They've made a better loss than the previous period. I mean, did those results give you any reason to have faith in Murray & Roberts, of course, after the rights issue?
Well, Murray & Roberts is in a difficult situation. I mean, this is a cyclical sector. All the construction guys are actually having trouble to produce good earnings and to get into profitable and get new solid projects onto their books. Now, the thing for Murray & Roberts is they've worked really hard to increase their revenue. Even though they've increased their revenue, they're still operating on a very low margin. So it does remain loss-making for them in the end of the day. But yeah, they have actually improved their loss to a smaller loss than we've seen over the last 3 years. 3.5 years of losses are very tough on a company, and I think anyone who participates in that rights issue has to have a lot of faith in Murray & Roberts.
Okay, so I mean, if we had to look ahead to key event risks at the moment, it's Jackson Hole, which starts tomorrow. Ben Bernanke speaking on Friday, and then we've got the ECB meeting next week. If you were trading some of the indices, you know, what would your strategy be right now?
Well, I think if we look forward to this, we've seen how the market expects one outcome, and if it goes the complete other way, the reaction afterwards hasn't been as drastic as we've expected if we're looking back at this year. So I don't think that Ben Bernanke will go into QE3, but even if he does, you know, the market, or if he does or if he doesn't, the market is very optimistic on the underlying growth factors coming from the States. We've seen the housing market grow there, we've seen jobs increasing, and those are the two most important economic indicators from the States to show us whether there is sustainable growth going forward. In the light of that, it makes it difficult for me to believe that he would really announce a QE3, because the underlying factors of growth is actually underpinning the US.
And a very important question, Paralympics start in London today, and we've got our question of the day is, who was the first Paralympian to be in the Olympics?
I have no idea.
We're going to have to wait until the end of Closing Bell South Africa for that. Mia Kruger, Portfolio Manager at Kruger International.